I have an article here from SlashFilm.com. It's up on archive. I'll link in the description box if you want to read it for yourself. Ant-Man 3 takes another huge dive at the box office, and that's bad news for Marvel. It's amazing how much a narrative can change in just 2 weeks. Ant-Man and the Wasp 3, or Quantumania, debuted with a record-setting $106 million in its opening weekend, a franchise best for Ant-Man, and yet another win for the MCU. This being the first film in Phase 5 of the MCU, which is all leading to Avengers: The Kang Dynasty and Avengers: Secret Wars, it was really important for Marvel Studios and Disney that this film performed well. Blah, blah, blah. Unfortunately, the long-term outlook is not looking so great, and one has to wonder what this might mean in the grand scheme of things. In its third weekend, Quantumania lost handily to Creed 3 and took in a mere $12.5 million. That represents a 61% drop week to week, which is particularly bad news given that director Peyton Reed's latest also suffered a huge drop just shy of 70% in its second weekend, marking the worst second weekend drop for an MCU movie ever. It was also one of the worst for a blockbuster movie of any kind in history. Unfortunately, things are not improving, and the outlook as a result could become a little ugly. So basically, it dropped I think 69 or 68.5% in its first weekend, then it drops another 61%. It's like, holy shit. Anyway, the movie, which has earned 419 million, 0.5 million globally to date, which is now expected to finish somewhere around 500 million worldwide, which would make it the lowest grossing entry in the franchise despite having the largest opening weekend. For context, the original Ant-Man earned 518 million worldwide, while Ant-Man and the Wasp finished with 623 million. And this movie was advertised as an Avengers-level event, with Jonathan Majors as Kang sold as the next Thanos-level threat. That only went so far. What I've seen is that the estimated production budget for Ant-Man 3 was about $200 million, which, people who know more about this stuff could probably explain it better, but generally you double or maybe 2.5 times the production budget for the break-even point. So in this case, if it costs $200 million to make, the break-even would be about $500 million. So if it's expected to finish around that, just barely at the break-even point, maybe even a little less, as it says here, that's not very good. I've heard some people say that, well, this means that Ant-Man's a dead franchise and stuff. It might be. I mean, I don't, I don't know how they're going to look at it. Very well could be, though. First problem that Marvel needs to contend with is the fact that these big drops are becoming more common with their films, with Phase 4 films averaging 64.3% drops in their second weekends compared to 55.2% in Phase 3. That seems to coincide with the increase in live-action MCU shows on Disney+, several of which have been met with mixed critical responses, as well as a relative decline in critical reception. Eternals also suffered very mixed to negative reviews, while the reception for Thor 4 was nowhere near as warm as it had been for Thor Ragnarok. Though not apocalyptic, things are trending downward. It's particularly problematic for Ant-Man, as Marvel took a big bet on Paul Rudd's well-liked hero by letting him kick off Phase 5 while introducing the world at large to Kang. Technically, he was in the Loki TV show. I mean, kind of, but it's complicated. But anyway, this is not a Thanos situation where he makes a small cameo until ultimately getting the lead role in Infinity War. Majors has a huge role in this film as one of the leads. Sure, plenty of people will probably watch this movie on Disney+, just as they did with Eternals, but casual MCU fans will run the risk of starting to fall behind, and if things continue this way, just simply not caring about the larger narrative come time for Kang Dynasty. This may sound like I'm hitting the panic button, but I'm certainly not, at least not yet. Might want to. I mean, me personally, I would be hitting that panic button, because Phase 4 didn't do well, Phase 5 isn't starting well, and there's not a lot coming in Phase 5 that's going to make you be like, whoa, hey, this is looking good. Like realistically speaking, what is there coming up that you're going to be like, hell yeah, dude, this is awesome. You could say it's superhero fatigue. Some people say just, the Marvel movies in general have become too formulaic. I'm sure there's a lot of different reasons why some people have for why these movies, or what they believe is the reason why these movies aren't doing as well as they used to. I think it's a little bit of all of the above. You're just not producing the quality. People are getting tired of the Quipamania shit and stuff. But anyway, we'll see. It goes on. Like I said, I'll link this in the description box. You can read it for yourself. This is where they talk about the $200 million production budget. Although this is a little bit different than what I was talking about, because it said something about movies have always had big budgets of $130 million, and we're talking about the MCU movies, but it appears to be less of a case-by-case basis now, with post-Endgame the starting price of $200 million before marketing. A big reason the earlier Ant-Man movies succeeded is that they were allowed to be smaller in scale relative to the rest of the MCU, which is very true and were budgeted accordingly. Quantumania is in the $200 million range, that being the case it needed to make more money, not less. Granted, after 2 successful movies and the huge numbers put up by Endgame, it seemed fair to give Reed, Rudd, and the rest of the cast a shot at a larger adventure. It just didn't pan out. And there's then they talk about, can Blade justify a $200 million budget? What about Fantastic Four? A reboot to the franchise that has never really worked on a massive scale. A lot of it's going to come down to casting for like Fantastic Four, in my opinion. I mean, like, because there's a certain iconicness, but at the same time, they're correct in saying that they need to make it the right scale. Like Ant-Man as like a smaller scale type movie, kind of almost like a crime caper type movie and stuff. I think those work well. Fantastic Four, it needs to be kind of like a mid-scale to start off at least, because they have to introduce these characters. They don't. I mean, they also have to have good actors and stuff behind the roles, but you got to be, you got to get the shit out there. This isn't like the X-Men or whatever. Fantastic Four, they had those 2 movies, but those were what, 20 years ago or something. They're not going to be, like that. But I don't know. That's neither here nor there, I suppose. But one of the problems I do think that Marvel has with their movies, kind of going back to that real quick, is a lot of their movies, not just is it formulaic in terms of like the comedy, quote unquote, but it's formulaic in terms of like just the layouts and stuff. They all try to make them these big budget action movies, and it's like, well, that's cool, but action isn't just one genre. They could do like, kind of like the Winter Soldier, Captain America and the Winter Soldier is widely considered one of the better ones. I wouldn't consider it one of the best myself. I mean, I would, but not like it's not super up there for me. Like, I really liked the movie and stuff; it was really good. But there's others I like better. Anyway, but that movie was different; had a different feel. A lot of the Marvel movies are now, and the TV shows are all getting the same kind of feel. Now the TV shows don't have the same feel as the movies because they're just lower budget. They have that kind of Netflix, MCU problem or whatever, where it's like it's just boring sometimes. It's like you're trying to do these, big budget action movies on a TV show scale, and it's just sitting around a lot of talking. Ugh, But anyway, we could go on and on talking about this for quite a while. I already have. Hell, this is already 7.5 minutes. Then I will say that they do bring up a somewhat interesting point in the fact that China's not bringing in the box office dollars the way it once was, and it says Russia's pretty much off the table. That was never a big thing. China was more a bigger deal for the MCU in terms of the money and stuff. But I think a lot of these things are just kind of coming together. You got superhero fatigue. The Marvel movies are becoming too formulaic. Their brand of humor is, people are getting really tired of it. The quality has just declined. The actors they're not getting these, it's like when it comes to the original Marvel, cast and stuff, there's Chris Evans, Hemsworth, Downey, Scarlett, etc. They hit on a lot of these. They were like bam, 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 bam. That's a hit. That's a hit. That's a hit. Now it's like you're kind of, well, is this guy the best one to play this role? Does he fit this? All this kind of stuff. And yeah, it's just one of those things where you're like, it's hard. It's hard out there. It's hard to to keep a successful franchise moving on. And it doesn't help when they're making it harder on themselves by doing certain things. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up here. This damn video is already 9 minutes long. Thank you very much for watching, and have a good one.